Right, in this video I'll show you how to cut your full snowflake pieces into semi-snowflakes, either houses or bunkers, or if you need to you can cut them again to form what I call sheds. As descriptions they kind of make more sense when you've got a full piece like this. So there you can see the house shape, and there's your bunker shape. And the reason you have these is for the edges of your board, so they all fit together like so. So the first thing you're going to do is take a snowflake piece that you cut earlier. Let's say we'll start with making this into a house piece. So you're going to take these your two house templates, and for the purpose of this one, I'm going to ignore these two tabs. They're not needed for this purpose. So once you decide where we're going to make the cut through, and as you're going to be able to see the edge on the outside of your board, to make it neat, you want to avoid going through these holes. So I'd suggest going somewhere like this across, and you can see if I flip this over that the holes in the template are positioned so the bolts will pass through the cog or hex shape if you've got that, pass through freely. Of course, if you're using hexes, the hex cut out, you don't want to be cutting them in half because it's just not going to do its job. This is the purpose of the cog, is to allow these side pieces to lock into the base. If you're using the ones with the hex insert, that's only useful for the middle of the board, not for the edge pieces. Okay, so I'll put this together. So I don't need to do it too carefully initially. I'll wait until we tighten it to do it carefully. So let's get one of these wing nuts on. And as these two bolts are pretty close together, you want to make sure the other one is out of the way. Arrange it this way before you tighten the next one. You'll soon figure that out by yourself if you don't get it right. Okay, so before I tighten them fully, I want to line up these templates. So you just need to get the corners, work out which the corners of the sort of the hex part of the snowflake are. I'll loosen it up a little bit. And line them up with the corners of the template. Now you want to get this neat, obviously, because why wouldn't you? But this is one of those things, it's true of all the edge pieces really, there's no compound error from this. You know, if you get this not quite right, it'll just mean that your line on the edge of the board is not going to be as neat as you might like. It's not going to have a compound error that's going to affect all the way through the board, like you've messed up one of your inner hexes. So don't worry too much. So there, you see that's lined up now at the corners. So the jigsaw parts, the male parts of the jigsaw are sticking out here, but that doesn't matter. Make sure it's as tight as you want it to be. Obviously don't crush it. And then there's a bit of a, on the house template, there's this kind of overhang at the end here to make it very easy to just rest your wire on there before and slide off afterwards. And that's it. So you've got one house there, and the other one when I take this off. And they're both usable. I like to paint the edges of these. So you can see I left the rest of it plain but unpainted, but the edges I've painted with a mix of brown paint and PVA glue or white glue, and it just means that when you assemble the board at the end, it's going to give you something approximating a clean edge there. Works quite neatly. So that's how to make the house ones. You could probably figure out the bunker ones by yourself, but for the sake of completeness, I shall do that too. So again, you want to make sure that the holes are not going to be on the edge that's cut. Okay, line them up. And when you're happy, tighten up those wing nuts. Make sure they're lined up so they're not going to snag the wire cutter as it goes past. And because of its nature, unfortunately, this bunker shape didn't allow me to design in an overhang here and make it multi-use. So just be careful when you start and finish. There you go. That's your bunker hex. Two of those, and again I like to paint the visible edge. So that all stuck together. Now, sorry, one of these upside down. Yeah. You've got to assemble your base before you put the pieces in, really. Now you see here, I've got an edge which is still unpainted, and let's see if we've got a female slot in it. So if I know I'm making a piece for a corner like that, just when I'm using the snowflake template originally, I won't cut in that part of it. I showed that on the video when we were cutting out the snowflake hex, how you leave one edge blank, so you do the same thing here, basically. Right, so you can go on from here to make some shed pieces, and since you only need at most 4 of these, I suggest you may as well do them. But I always view these shed pieces as what I call problem solvers. This is something I explained to my son when he was about 4, he's 6 now, when we were making train tracks. So if you're familiar with brio or any kind of wooden train track like this, the pieces have one male end, one female end. And he got these pieces and he was keen to use them straight away, but I explained to him that these are what I call problem solvers. So it's not going to, you want to avoid using these pieces unless they're useful. So at the point where you've got a problem where you need a double female piece, that's when you use it. But you don't just put it into your track because you're going to create problems. And it's a bit like that with shed pieces. So a shed piece will attach into the base quite easily, quite well. The bit I'm always worried about is the cog section. So it only has one point of contact, one point of connection here, which will connect it together. But if you've got a sort of a high tower of pieces in the corner, it's quite a loose connection. Like it's going to work, but you may have somebody clumsily knocking it off. And you can simply plan your board around this. You don't need shed pieces if you plan it carefully. So for instance here, in this corner here, there's no need for a shed piece. You've simply got a bunker joining onto a row of houses. So it'd be bunker, hex, bunker, and so on along there, row of houses along here. There's no need for a shed piece. If you did it the other way, I'll take this off for a moment. If you did this the other way, just like this is where you'd need to have a shed piece. So it's useful to have them because sometimes you're not going to have exactly the hexes that you need. Maybe you haven't got around to building enough of them yet. So it gives you a bit more flexibility for those situations. But with sufficient planning, you should always be able to have your boards meet like this. So I'd recommend doing this if and when you can, and only use the sheds if you need to. But as I say, I do find them useful sometimes, despite that. So to cut a shed piece, we'll take one of these, take this bunker that we made earlier, and you can take two of them, take them both, and I'm going to put it back into this jig again. So in there, obviously put your bolts through exactly as before, tighten your wing nuts, line this up, run your hot wire, run your hot wire across to cut that out into two of these, or four of these in fact. So there's two types of shed pieces. This one is not the same as this. They're kind of the opposite of each other. I'm not going to cut these out because I need some more bunkers, and I've already cut my four of these that I need, so I don't need any more of those. Okay, that's all you need to know really to make yourself bunkers, houses, and shed snowflakes.